with the Harwich Conservation Trust. And today, we only have Michael Lach with us. We should let you know that his associate, Ryan, is on his honeymoon. Oh, picked a tough time to go on. The wind could have taken him away.
Right.
But anyhow, we wish him well. And Michael's going to start us off today with a subject which is very important to the Conservation Trust and to him personally, and that's citizen science. And it involves eels, herring, and birds. And how do you want to start? Which one comes first?
Well, you know, it's really the volunteers that make our conservation work possible, whether it's the volunteer board of trustees or the countless citizens who help with our volunteer wildlife observation and habitat enhancement projects. We could not do the work that we do, we couldn't achieve the success that we achieve without their help. And one of the great ways that they get involved is through these citizen science projects, which we define as direct volunteer involvement in wildlife observation and wildlife habitat enhancement projects, which not only enables them to learn and discover new things, but also adds to our growing base of knowledge about particular species and habitats so that we can improve our land management over time.
When we think sometimes of citizen science, oftentimes we think of just the young, but there's no age limit to the citizen science project.
That's right, Paul. Yeah, and we have actually had a variety of ages involved. It was primarily folks that are of retirement age that are involved. They have the most time available, but I have to tell you, some of the retired folks I know are busier than the employed folks. They have so many different interests, and they contribute in so many different ways, whether it's through Harwich Conservation Trust or other conservation-oriented organizations or other human service organizations. People have many interests and passionate commitments, and we're lucky here on the Cape. And so some of the species that we've been involved with through this volunteer work include American eel, herring, and a variety of songbirds. And we can talk a little bit about each if you'd like.
Oh, very good. I know that you had a little engineering project with the eels, so that brought a few different talents to
Yes,
to
it
bear.
did. That's right. In addition to our volunteers, we've partnered with the town harbor master, Tom Leach, and environmental science director, Heinz Proft, the local conservation commission, the state's Division of Marine Fisheries, and the federal, the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. You can see the eel ramp right there. It's quite an interesting device. It was conceptualized by Brad Chase, who not only serves on the local conservation commission, but is also an aquatic biologist with the state's Division of Marine Fisheries. And to get an idea of what this eel ramp does, we have to take a step back and understand really the life cycle of the American eel. It's a species that has sort of the opposite life cycle of our herring, right? Our herring, we know, migrate up here in the spring from the ocean to spawn in the freshwater ponds and migrate back downstream, back to the ocean. Well, the American eel spawns in a part of the Atlantic Ocean called the Sargasso Sea. So the eggs hatch there. The young swim up along the eastern seaboard. You can see some various sizes there in our temporary catch basin before we release them. So they spawn in the Sargasso Sea. So they spawn in salt water as opposed to herring spawning in fresh water. So the young swim up the eastern seaboard and they enter various estuaries, that mix of fresh water flowing into salt water through streams. So they enter these streams, tidal creeks that eventually change into freshwater streams that are connected to ponds. So these eels make their way into ponds and then mature in these freshwater ponds. They can mature over several years, 7 to sometimes estimated 15 or more years, depending on the sex of the eel and and if they can survive the food chain, because everything eats eels.
Right. Is that right?
Yeah, oh yes.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, including people a long time
That's
ago,
right.
and maybe some people still today. The legal catch length for eels in the state is more than 6 inches, 6 inches or more. Almost all of these eels that migrate up through our eel migration ramp, the picture you saw previously, are less than 6 inches, so they're below the legal catch limit. But they are critical because they need to get to their freshwater ponds to mature, to grow to adult size, and then continue the life cycle all over again, because the adults then swim downstream to the Atlantic, to the Sargasso Sea, spawn, and start it all over again. Well, what happens? Sometimes when the eels are migrating up these streams, they encounter obstacles. They can't get to their freshwater ponds to mature. One such obstacle in the Cold Brook system had been a Cranberry Dike, all right? Put together, created for good purposes, for cultivating cranberries, controlling water flow for a nearby cranberry bog, inadvertently cutting off the migration route for these American eels. Well, we worked with the local cranberry grower as well as those other agencies I mentioned, and decided that we could put an eel ramp over the Cranberry Dike so that we could allow the cranberry grower to continue using the water flow for growing the cranberries, as well as enabling the eels to wriggle up this ramp. Heinz Proft calls it an elevator in a way. Wriggle up the ramp over the Cranberry Dike into the pond to mature. So we could continue cranberry growing and restore the American eel migration route. This has been very successful, so much so that we've documented through volunteers. This is where the volunteers come in, not only helping with the assemblage of the eel ramp parts and storage and making the pump work. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts for a low-tech device, and also counting the eels. Believe it or not, volunteers visit the site and count the eels. They migrate over the ramp into a temporary catch basin, and then the volunteers visit this site each morning. We have an arrangement with a private property owner because this is on private property, so we have special permission for these volunteers to visit. They count the eels in this bucket and then pour the bucket out into the pond, and then the eels are on their way. So, volunteers have counted over 6,500 eels that migrated in 2008. That jumped to 25,000 eels in 2009. In 2010, it was somewhere up in the range of, I wrote it down here, 4,750, more than 4,750 eels, so a little bit of a dip. And our numbers are still being crunched right now, but I think we're going to be up over around 4,000. We had a little bit of a delay in the eel ramp installation this year, but I think we're going to be up over 4,000. So, geez, I mean, what does that mean? That's probably around 40,000 eels that have migrated over the past 4 seasons. Seasons being roughly end of March through July, and that's when the ramp is installed. Now, why are eels important? Well, we know that probably most people probably don't have a lot of affection for these eels. Sometimes they remind people of snakes. They're not reptiles; they are fish. But
they're slimy.
They're slimy, yeah. But they're
a
key food source for a number of species, whether they're in the stream, pond, or in the ocean. Commercially and recreationally caught fish, bluefish, striped bass, you name it. Marine mammals, dolphins, there's other fish, sharks. Many other fish eat eels. And then when they're in the streams and ponds, a variety of bird life, whether it's black-crowned night heron and other wading birds, will eat them. And so they're key to the food web. In fact, eels have taken such a hit because of obstacles in their migration routes and other impacts that they were considered at one point, I think it was in 2007, for inclusion on the federal, that's big time, federal endangered species list. Yeah, but they didn't make the cut.
Tough to tell the other fish that.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yes.
We can be told not to touch, but you know, that's instinct, and that's food.
Yeah, and so right, exactly, and so I mean the key factor here is the eel is a kind of a keystone species in the estuarine food web, and this Cold Brook happens to wind its way, this migration route, right through our largest protected landholding. right in Harwichport, the Bank Street Bogs Nature Preserve. Who knew? So, again, the volunteers make it happen.
Very good.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to move on to the herring.
Herring, yes, another
The,
aquatic species. You see the sign there. Taking of herring prohibited. We know we're, I think, in year number 6 of a statewide moratorium on the taking or harassment, picking up anything to do with affecting the herring species, because that's a reaction to their precipitous decline over the past decade or more.
Was there any improvement over year this year?
Well, that's what we're trying to get a handle on, and that's why, again, the volunteers, the citizen science volunteers, play a huge part. You know, we are with our project partners involved in a herring count program through our volunteer efforts, and they actually count the fish. You can see them as they swim over the threshold from Herring River at a point into Hinckley's Pond. And they count these fish at a minimum of 10-minute increments as their schedule permits. We line up the schedule in the spring. That's a beautiful photo by David Constance, one of our volunteer photographers, right there in the Herring River. Isn't it a great shot?
As I recall, you have over 50 volunteers on that
Yeah,
project.
we do. That's right. That's right. Yeah, we've spoken about this project before. And so some of the counts include in 2009, the estimated run size was 23,000. In 2010, the estimated run size was 40,000. But in 2011, again, our numbers are still coming in. It's going to drop down. There was a cold, wet start to the run season. It was really questionable as to how quickly we were going to be able to assemble our numbers. But again, critical species to the ecosystem, and obviously our culture as well, our historical knowledge about these species.
We're getting a little push here. They want us to move along.
Sure.
The birds you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, birds nest box monitors. Check out that photo, eastern bluebird. We have a number of volunteers who also work with the Cape Cod Bird Club, monitoring almost 80 nest boxes that are strung out across, isn't that beautiful, the black-capped chickadee. 42 nest boxes at our Bank Street Bogs Nature Preserve, another 24 at Thompson's Field, town-owned Thompson's Field, another dozen at the town-owned Texera Conservation Lands. That's tree swallow right there, feeding its young, a dragonfly. And amazing photos. These are by another volunteer nest box monitor and photographer, Janet DiMattia from Yarmouth, actually. That's a beautiful photograph of American tree swallow. Without these nest boxes and the volunteers monitoring them, we would not have the type of fledging that we've seen, especially at the Bank Street Bogs Nature Preserve. Often these trees that provide the cavities for these birds are cut down for development or just for aesthetic purposes, but they're critical because of the holes that they provide through woodpeckers and other species naturally. So when those trees and holes aren't existing, we put up nest boxes in their place. The volunteers need to monitor them, make sure everything's going well.
I have a woodpecker thinks she's going to make a nest in my house.
Oh, that can happen in the spring especially.
And now the wolves are coming.
The wolves are coming. We'll talk more in detail coming up, but that's Magpie right there. Amazing, isn't it? And she, that's just a classic silver-haired image of a wolf, yellow eyes. We've got a couple others there. October 14th and 15th, that's Friday, October 14th, a special limited seating program at 6:30 in the community center here, 6:30 in the evening, Friday, October 14th. That's $100 per person, limited to under 100 people.
That worked well last
That did,
year.
yeah, close encounters of the wolf kind. And then we have the general admission program on Saturday, October 15th, 3 times, including 11 a.m., 1:30 in the afternoon, and also 4 p.m. And you can see some real neat interactions there with these photos from last year's event. You can see a slideshow of these photos at our website and also reserve in advance for this program coming up at harwichconservationtrust.org, our website. Or give us a call, we'll give you the info. We're looking forward to it.
And you're going to participate in this year's Fall for Harvest again?
Fall for Harwich, yeah. We have a number of walks that fortunately our walk leaders are coordinating, and also Mission Wolf. And again, you can see the walk details at our website, harwichconservationtrust.org.